Happy Constitution Day. I'm Brian Lilly with the Rebel.media. Did you know that it was Constitution Day this week? If you're worried that you didn't get me anything, that's okay. I didn't get you anything either. But I do have some interesting poll results for you, results that show when it comes to a lot of issues that our political and media establishment, the elites, well, they consider them settled. This poll shows that everyday Canadians have a different viewpoint. Constitution Day, by the way, is something the Canadian Constitution Foundation dreamt up a few years ago after noting that both the British North America Act, now called the Constitution Act of 1867, and the Constitution Act of 1982 were both given royal assent on March 29th. I'm 115 years apart, but March 29th in their respective years. So to mark the date, the CCF, that being the Canadian Constitution Foundation, not to be confused with the old-time socialists of the Cooperative Commonwealth Federation, the NDP's predecessors, well, the good CCF commissioned a poll from Ipsos. And this poll of 1,003 Canadians across Canada has some things that make my heart sing and some things that make my heart sink. Some of the findings will be controversial, not so much to average Canadians, but to the media and political establishment that think they've all got it figured out. Yeah, it's going to be controversial. But as someone that's been at this a long time, worked with most of the major polling firms, let me say that I trust Ipsos completely. Don't like every result. They don't all align to my way of thinking, but I trust them. I trust the results. So what did the poll find? Well, let's start with what I don't like, and then we'll get to what gives me hope, from property rights to judicial activism, even Canadian viewpoints on life issues. On the bad news front, when it comes to income, apparently Canadians believe in socialism. Stick with me. Honestly, things get better. But asked, do you agree or disagree with the following statement? The Charter should guarantee a minimum income for all Canadians. A full 75% of Canadians agreed with the idea of a guaranteed minimum income. I wish I could say that one part of the country, one demographic group, be it age or income level, supported this so strongly that it skewed the results, but that's not the case. Across the board, Canadians apparently believe that whether you work or not, you should get a minimum income from the government. Okay, what else don't I like in this poll? Well, this is, admittedly, a bit of a mixed bag. Canadians were asked to agree or disagree with this statement. The Charter should protect all individual behavior that does not harm another. Well, on that front, Canadians took a very open, even libertarian view. A full 86% agreed with this. But then the poll dug a little deeper. So they're all for doing whatever you want as long as it doesn't hurt others. But then they asked, do you agree or disagree that the Charter right to free speech should protect even so-called hate speech? 60% said no, only 40% said yes. Asked whether free speech should protect speech that praises terrorism, 72% said no. So in the abstract, Canadians are all about ultimate freedom. In concrete ways, not so much. Even on this result, which kind of coincides with M103, the poll asked people to agree or disagree with this statement. The Charter right to free speech should protect speech that criticizes specific religions. Well, only 56% agreed that you should be able to criticize a specific religion. 44% disagreed. But in Atlantic Canada, the majority said no, you should not be allowed to criticize a specific religion. Okay, so at this point you might be getting depressed, wondering what the hell is in this poll to be happy about. Well, let's start with property rights, and this is a very uplifting result. Asked whether they would support or oppose adding the protection of property rights to the Charter, a full 92% of Canadians said they supported the idea, with just 8% opposing. How much of a communist do you have to be to oppose property rights? Well, young people between 18 to 34, and those with graduate degrees, those were the least likely to support the idea of adding property rights, and even they were above 80%. On affirmative actions for jobs and the like, 69% of Canadians support the idea of repealing that. If you follow the stats on affirmative action hiring from the federal government, like I do, then you know the goal is to have a representative workforce, and yet whether you break it down by language, ethnicity, ability, any way you break it down, the groups they track, well, they're overrepresented compared to their percentage of the workforce. But we still have jobs that only some groups can apply for. On abolishing the Senate, 64% say that's a good idea. If you're a senator with bad headlines in the last decade or so, you have not helped this cause. 70% would agree with an 8-year term limit for prime ministers, which, if you consider it really, it could be considered the best before date for any government, and you wouldn't often be wrong. Now, on abortion, people were asked if they would support or oppose giving some constitutional rights to the unborn before birth. I've been following this issue for years. I'm not shocked. Canadians have a complex view of abortion. They don't want it banned, but they do want some kind of restrictions. It's been consistent for years, and more than 60% say they agree with giving some kind of rights to the unborn. 82% of Canadians support requiring persons to uncover their face when taking the oath of citizenship. Now, I've given you a ton of info here, but honestly, I find this poll fascinating. It asked real and meaningful questions on issues that the elites in this country take for granted that they consider to be settled, which brings me to my final point, and that is the role of judges in this country, the role of judges in interpreting the Constitution. The elite view in Canada is that the Constitution's a living tree. It's always changing. The meaning of it changes with the times or the judge's own political, moral viewpoints. That's the view of our Chief Justice, Beverly McLaughlin. But it isn't the majority view in Canada. Respondents were asked, how should judges decide what the various provisions of the Constitution mean? Just 23% said, according to the judge's opinion, about what is best for Canadian society. Compare that to 44% who said, according to the plain meaning of the words of the Constitution, or the 33% who said, according to the intent of the people who wrote the Constitution. So no matter how you slice it, Canadians believe more in interpreting the law based on reality rather than the whim of the judge hearing the case at the time. As I said earlier, there are some things in this poll I don't like, such as a majority of Canadians backing the minimum income. But on so many issues, this poll shows that there's a disconnect between the elite view of our progressive political better-thans, the media establishment, and regular Canadians. And that, my friends, gives me hope. If you like the Rebel video you just watched, click here to subscribe. Never miss another one again.